are back with another episode 30 of the Dream Shakers podcast. I am your host, George Nunez, alongside with my co-host,
Stefan Odom.
and today we have a special guest, an interesting guest. This person is a USC alum with a bachelor's and master's degree in aeronautical and astronautical engineering. He has also had project/engineering experiences at Southland Industries, USC Space Engineering Research Center, Lockheed Martin, and NASA. So please help me welcome Jesus Ojeda.
Thank you, Steph, George. Man, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I've been following you guys since you started the podcast, and I've just been waiting for the day where George calls me and he says, "Hey, you want to hop on the project?" And here we are, man. Very thankful for the space.
Well, we appreciate you, brother, for your consistent amount of support. We don't take that for granted. And I could remember those calls that we would have like, "Hey, George, I watched your recent episode. It's amazing. Keep going. I'm proud of you. Stay consistent." And we wanted to be consistent and also have a voice like yourself to vocalize your journey and show the people that there are different forms of tech that they could spend some time of their career in. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, with that, let's talk about the upbringing, because the upbringing is
It's
where
important.
you're created, right? It's
That's true,
imperative
man.
for us to talk about. So how was it growing up in California, particularly Oxnard, from there moving out to Mexico and spending some time out there because that's where your family's from,
Right.
and also coming to LA? How was that whole experience of, having that immigrant background and
Yeah.
also being from the West Coast?
Well, yeah, man, I think having that immigrant mindset has really impacted a lot of aspects of my life, not only from the way I think to also how I look at my future, right? Like my goals in life. Uh, I was born, like George said, here in Oxnard, in California, in Ventura County. When I was very little, I moved. My mom moved back to Mexico because that's where my dad was. My dad didn't have what you call legal status to be here in the U.S., so it was just my mom and myself. And yeah, man, I grew up in a super small town. There were more cows than people where I grew up, man. Can you believe that? But something that I really really appreciated of my little town is that it was really close to the city airport. So the city airport was like over there, out in the fields, 30-minute drive from the main city, the capital of the state where I grew up, Michoacan. The city was Morelia. So yeah, man, my little town where I grew up, I will go on the roof of my house and just stare at the airplanes come taking off and landing. It was a beautiful sight, man. Since I was a little kid, I always had a keen interest in playing with Legos, you know, messing around with my dad's tools and fixing up bikes and stuff like that. So I always had these hands-on interest for things. And then, growing up, my parents will buy me Legos, and we were not a rich family, but you know, my family always managed to. Every Christmas, I'll get like a new set of Legos, and that was it, and I will be happy for the rest of the year. So since I started playing with Legos and all that stuff as a kid, I developed this keen interest for building things, putting things together, breaking them apart, coming up with my own uh, call it designs. So since I was a kid, my parents would tell me, "Oh, you should be an engineer." And in my mind, I was like, "Oh, engineers!" And I always looked at that's why I really like you guys as a background, because I was always fascinated by space. Growing up in this little town, bro, there was very little to no light pollution, so you could see the stars very clearly. And I would always wonder, like, what's out there? How can I go there? So since I was a little kid, I devoted myself to study different sciences, chemistry, physics. I wasn't your typical geek, but I still dwell into it. I wanted to learn about it. So thankfully, when I turned, I think it was 10 years old, I managed to get a scholarship, a parent scholarship, to attend a private elementary school in the main city. So it was rough going from the little town to the quote unquote big city, because I mean I kind of got bullied at the beginning, because I was like, oh, this this small town boy. What does he know about the city life? Or I get called out names and all that. But man, I think that helped a lot to develop who I am as a person, because we used to get up about 5 in the morning every day, Monday to Friday. And it was like that for like 10 years, I believe, 10, 12 years, going to the city and back. And when I was about to finish high school, I had told my mom, I said, I wanna try my chances and go to the US. I want to get a college education in the US. And my goal was always to become an aerospace engineer. Granted, I applied to a bunch of schools in Mexico. I got to a really good institution over there. It's called Tecnológico de Monterrey, one of the best private schools. I got in with a scholarship, but it was to study mechatronics, and that was something I was like really interested in. So mechatronics was not my main interest. So what I did, I told my parents, I'm leaving. I always wanted to be an aerospace engineer. Why? Because I did my research, and since I wanted to be an astronaut and go to space, the majority of the people that had gone to space, they were all aerospace engineers. And then my dream was also to attend USC. And you might ask, why USC? There's better schools like Caltech, Stanford, MIT that are more renowned in the engineering field. But the reason why I wanted to attend USC is because that's where Neil Armstrong, the first man to land on the moon, went to get his master's degree. In fact, we have a statue of the man over there in the engineering court. So in my mind, I said, I only had two goals. It was to get into USC, graduate with a bachelor's and my master's from USC, and to work for NASA. So at the age of 18, I left everything I knew behind, brother. My mom, my dad, my sister. I had a girlfriend at the time that she had to stay behind too, and I moved here with my uncle. I was living with my uncle and my cousin over there in Oxnard, and I enrolled in community college. It was rough, man, because people look down on you when you attend community college. You go to recruiting events, they're like, oh, community college. They don't even look at you when you're trying to apply for an internship or a job. So I was looking around. A friend of mine contacted me. He said, hey, there's a hospital they're building next to the community college. There's this mechanical contractor. They're building HVAC systems. He said, you want to get the job? Because he was transferring out to a university. I said, absolutely. And at the time, my family had moved here from Mexico. They migrated here 2 years after I did. And, my dad didn't speak the language. My mom, she spoke the language. She grew up here. But they were unemployed, bro. So this opportunity came at the right time. I was supporting my family for 2-3 months until my parents became more acquainted with with the system over here, until they got a job. And yeah, man, I believe that everything happens for a reason. That happened. Then I managed to get into USC, and then the rest is just history, man. I got into my master's program. I managed to get into NASA for JPL, working on the Mars 2020 rover. So that was a huge accomplishment for me. And after that, man, I felt this emptiness as to, man, what now? I've achieved everything I always hoped for. What's next? And I said, I want to start a second career. I want to start a business. So I started a small business with my dad in the transportation industry. I also went ahead and got my license to become a mortgage loan originator. And right now that I'm more familiar with the real estate mortgage industry, I'm starting to work on developing a platform, a tech platform, to apply into the real estate industry. So that's pretty much a really broad overview of my upbringing, bro. I left out probably a lot of details, but if you want to dive into one of them, just let me know. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about me growing up.
No, you're quite all right, Jesus. And you did provide some space there for us to navigate into some additional questions we have. And one right off the bat, you touched on the master's degree for just a little bit, but how did you decide to double down on the master's, considering you had the bachelor's? Why not enter industry, experience that first, and then determine whether or not you were going to need to go back and get that graduate degree? What was the thought process there?
Yeah, so my thought process was just take advantage.
And brother, could you explain to the world what's aeronautical and
Yeah.
astronautical engineering and aerospace engineering,
Absolutely, bro.
as a follow-up to Steph's question.
Yeah, you got it. So, Steph, that's a really good question, man, because I just took advantage of the system that that was in front of me. So at USC, they offer this +1 program, and basically, instead of doing 27 units, you only do 24. So out of the bat, they already remove a class that you need to take. And then what I did is that I extended my undergraduate degree by, I think, like another semester, so that I took classes from my master's program that will still be covered for my under my undergrad financial aid. So thankfully, at the end of the day, I got a bachelor's and a master's education for the cost of half a year at USC. So that was a pretty good. And I couldn't let go of the chance, and I said, I probably won't find a company that will sponsor me, and if I find a company that will sponsor me to pay for my master's, then it's gonna be a long time for me to finish it. And so that's basically the reasoning. I knew I wanted to get a master's. I knew I was gonna do it, and it's just that at this time the opportunity itself was right in front of my face, and I had to grab it before it went away. And to answer to Josh to George's question, sorry. So there's two different things, right? You have astronautical and you have aeronautics. So aeronautics deals with anything below the atmosphere, right? You don't go into space. So this will be like your typical aircraft, helicopters. Once you get into more like the astronautics, then you're dealing with stuff such as satellites. And then the perfect mix of both of them will be rockets, because they start here and they end up in space. So my program at USC, it was very, very well balanced. In fact, USC has an emphasis in purely astronautical, which I didn't want to go into because at the time I was working in space. I was working for JPL, working all kinds of space missions. When I was working at Lockheed before that, I was doing mostly space missions. So in my mind, I wanted to keep myself open to eventually dwell into or dive into aeronautics, work with aircraft, which is what I'm doing right now. I work at for Lockheed Martin as an aeronautics engineer, and yeah, I mean that's it. I took on this job because I wanted to give it a shot in the aeronautics and see which one I like better before I commit myself just to one specific field, call it astronautics or aeronautics.
Appreciate that background. Now let's get into your experiences at NASA or NASA. And what are your thoughts on competitors like SpaceX?
Man, I used to be very, man, how would I say it? I didn't like the idea of the private sector entering into like space launches the way the SpaceX is doing. I mean, you have your ULA and these companies sending payloads all the time. And, I changed my mind. I had an opportunity to meet one of SpaceX founders. His name was Tom Mueller. This is the gentleman who basically designed the propulsion system for the Falcon 9, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember very well. This was about like 6-7 years ago. And when I had we shared a conversation with the guy, a couple words, and he stole my attention, man. I believed in their mission and seeing what they do. If you compare, for example, you have NASA, the SLS, the rocket that they're building for heavy lifting, and you look at SpaceX. NASA has been working on this for years now, and they just keep throwing money at it. And there's, from my point of view, there's not that much innovation being done with the SLS. And then you have SpaceX. SpaceX manages to build the rockets in the blink of an eye, relatively speaking, to what NASA used to do or is doing right now. So for me, I believe that companies like Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, Relativity, Electron moving into the private sector of space launch and space engineering, I'm all for it now because I can see how that's driving innovation at a higher rate than what we were seeing previously with NASA. Now, I do believe there is a way for both private and NASA government to work as to, okay, how about if NASA takes let's say they take the money, they direct it towards maturing certain types of technologies, and then selling that technology, and having companies like SpaceX mature beyond that point, and being some sort of incubator for innovation, and then having these companies also take over those technologies once they're fully developed or partially developed to a level where they can be used.
So the critique then is that NASA, as it stands currently, just isn't pushing the cutting edge as much as it did prior to when it was the only game in town. Is that the idea?
Yeah, Steph, I don't want to generalize about NASA, but that's more like what I see, for example, in the space, in the launch area, or yeah, in launch, space launch. Because, for example, I look at a JPL, the things that they're doing there is, man, like the people that I met when I was working there were by far the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. They're pushing for, well, that's what they do, is push the envelope on space exploration, push our boundaries that we know on space, our solar system, our galaxy, our universe. So I think JPL is doing a great job. And the reason why, I might be wrong about this, but I still want to throw the comment out there. The reason why I believe they're doing a great job is because they're being managed by Caltech. So JPL itself is not like a NASA center as we know. Like you have like Kennedy or Armstrong here in California. So they're a federally funded research center managed by Caltech, and we know Caltech is a powerhouse for innovation, just academia. Really, really talented people graduate from that school. So they're able to pouch from over there from Caltech, bring these people onto JPL with funds from NASA, which is what I was mentioning to you guys, right? Like, how about NASA provides the funds to develop new technologies and keep people competitive? And I see that's kind of what's happening at JPL. You have this really base of really, really talented people that are getting the money from NASA. They're being well managed and administrated by Caltech. And I feel like that's what makes JPL very innovative and always pushing the boundaries, always pushing the envelope. So that's why I say I don't want to generalize like NASA overall, but at least in the space launch, yes, they're a little bit behind. I'm more for the private, but yeah.
So just building off of that concept, we're gonna continue to move the interview right along. What are your thoughts on the future of space?
Oh, man, so many of them. I don't even know which one. Before I used to think, maybe building some sort of colony on the moon will be pretty interesting. But now seeing all the different technologies being developed, like I see the future of space is having the human race being an interplanetary race, which is like what Elon Musk's is all about, right? Like getting to Mars, develop colonies on Mars. So for me, I see that as a future of space, is expanding the human species beyond the ozone layer that we have, beyond our atmosphere. Let's go to space. Let's go to the moon. Let's go inhabit the moon. Then we'll move to Mars, and sooner or later we'll colonize the whole universe. Maybe we'll start with the solar system. So at least that's where I see it going. Especially, like I said, there's been all this what you call entrepreneurship in the space sector, in the space business, that it's crazy how competitive it's getting. But I think it's thanks to the people like Elon Musk that have pioneered, entrepreneurship in the space business that other people wouldn't dare to even touch before. And he's found a way to make it reliable and cheaper and making it more accessible. So I can see us moving into an interplanetary species in the future.
Yeah, that is amazing. And so let's really talk about it, right? Because NASA wasn't the only company you worked for. You worked for Lockheed Martin, as we previously explained. So what pivoted your interest from stars to skies, right? And also, for those in the audience that are unaware, can you explain what Lockheed Martin is and what products/services it provides?
Absolutely. So Lockheed Martin, it's a aerospace and defense company. They serve different they provide different products per se, from the military, from like aircraft to radar to missiles and different weapon systems, to also satellites. Um, for example, one of the things that they worked is that they actually helped develop InSight, which was a mission that they sent to Mars to measure Marsquakes, and that was actually built by a team of Lockheed Martin people in Denver, Colorado. So they provide a broad broad spectrum of different services. They range from aeronautics, like I said, to space. They also build what do you call it, like warships or boats. So but vessels. So that's mainly what they do, you know, provide different services, but mainly their focus is in the defense industry. Now, when I was at JPL, it was mostly just research. So go formulate a mission. Actually, one of the teams that I was part of, it was a formulation team where, for example, let's say Steph comes up with an idea. Every 10 years, they have what it's called the decadal studies at NASA. And basically, it's like the greatest academics, the greatest minds in the world get together and they start brainstorming as to, hey, what should we focus on for the next 10 years, right? So Steph comes to us and he says, you know, well, I want to put together a mission to go explore the asteroid ring in our solar system. You know, it goes through to different phases, and it gets selected, almost like a startup per se. You have your different rounds of funding. Here you have your different rounds of verification, validation, until you make it to a final round, where then you get selected, you get funded, and it gets pushed to be developed, and you know, eventually go do what Steph had proposed in the beginning. So what I see the difference here is that I feel companies such as Lockheed, you have Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Boeing, it's mainly focused on profits. It's a business. While on the other side, you have JPL, or NASA, which is mainly focused on exploration. Let's get the mission done. Of course, we want to make it as affordable. Let's not waste the money. Let's make sure we have a budget that we can respect. But I feel like on one side you have very tight, what do you call it, expectations from the chairmans and the executives, while on the other is that, okay, we want to achieve this mission, let's do all we can so we can achieve it. So it was pretty interesting going from one to the other, mainly because my area of experience with Lockheed Martin right now is mostly aeronautics, and with JPL it was mainly space exploration. I mean, we put a rover on Mars, so very, very different fields. But the main difference that stuck to me, it was that, like, one, you're working to meet the chairman, the investors budgets and profits. The other one, you're working for the taxpayers to make sure you explore and develop new technologies that will eventually benefit humanity.
Now, given that difference, right, the shifts in the environments that you're operating in, you're in the most elite, most secret version of Lockheed, right? The Skunks Works team, right? How top secret is the division, right? And can you provide some examples of the protocols, just the protocols employees have to abide by, to give our audience some context? Like, when you came home that first day and you got the offer, did you just tell your mom, your family, hey, I got a job someplace, I'm gonna be working somewhere in the country? Like, what was the what was some of those initial discussions around Skunkworks? Because we know it's very hush hush.
And Steph, I don't know, man. I think that it's safe to say, if it's top secret, I don't think he'll let us know that it's really top secret.
Yeah, I don't know what I can say, but I'll say what I know I can. So basically, when I first got the job, I told my parents, I got a job over here. I told them, I'm gonna be working over there for Skunk Works, and I told them, just don't ask me what I do for work. I'm an engineer. It's all that matters. There are strict protocols. For example, if you have contact with a foreign person, you have to report it. It's part of part of the protocols. Also, you got to be careful in social media who you're dealing with. You never know who you're gonna accept a friendship from. So you got to make sure that whoever you're following on social media, who you're uh, friends with, just make sure that you know them. And this goes to anyone who's looking to pursue a career in this. It's always good to make sure you are very careful with your acquaintances, with the people that you follow online, because it is important that you take care of your image, right? To some extent. But yeah, other than that, it's basically you try to stay as low key as you want. So just like people know where I work, but I don't never post about, oh, we worked in this or did that, blah blah blah. Even if my employer that hasn't necessarily prohibited me from, for example, like, oh, post something about the company, or celebrate like an anniversary. I try to not do that. Like, I just want to do my job, learn, and contribute as much as I can. All protocols is basically, like I mentioned, if you travel somewhere, make sure you're staying at a safe place. Make sure that you keep all your records of what you say, because when people travel, they leave and come back. You actually have to report that to the person who's in charge of security, right? And you want to make sure that you keep a really clean record. You don't want to have any, any gray areas, any confusions, things that don't match. Make sure you're very, very, very careful with that. And that's basically it, man. Just don't be out there posting stuff about some other countries on that side of the world.
Got it. We not going. Hey, that's enough. That's enough. I already feel like the antenna started going up. We got the signals going off. I think I just got a notification on my phone. That's good. We appreciate you, Jesus. That was enough context right there. We're gonna navigate right over to the next question. We don't want to step on nobody's toes on our humble podcast.
Let's go.
Okay, so we got a chance to talk about Lockheed. We got a chance to talk about NASA. So let's figure out this next one, right? This next piece in regards to
what is it?
Renewables and sustainable energy. How is the broad interest in that space impacting rockets and propulsion development, or specifically jet propulsion development?
Right. No, that's a good question, George, because there are a lot of companies making efforts to create either fuels that are less hazardous to the environment, to developing aircraft that are more efficient, to develop also aircraft that are propelled by electricity. Now, here's the issue that we've encountered with the aerospace industry, with aeronautics mainly. So when you have a plane that is working with call it a regular engine, right? You got your fuel, you got your tanks. As you keep flying, the plane gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter because you're burning the fuel. So that actually helps you go for longer distances. It allows you to also fly more efficiently over a period of time when your plane is significantly lighter. The issue with batteries is that battery's a battery, man. It's gonna weigh the same charge or not charged. So when you're taking off, let's say you have 2,000 pounds of battery weight. It's not like you're gonna go flying and then dropping batteries here and there. You take them with you, you bring them back. So that has been one of the main challenges, is that how do you make batteries that are dense enough in energy that can be relatively small, so that you can take off and land with them with this amount of weight, and that it makes it still efficient. There is a study that was made by Boeing. It was actually one of the persons who put this study together was one of my professors at USC. It's called the Shakerz studies. So this one actually, they went and did the research and what would the most eco-friendly plane would look like. They ran a bunch of different scenarios. And what this professor, when he presented this to us in class, he was actually talking about electric aircraft. And he showed us a plot of how energy density in the batteries was increasing over time and what were the predictions. So what the chart showed is that we're not going to see fully electric planes that are covering the same amount of distance as a traditional aircraft propelled by fuel until 2040s, 2050s. Why? Because of that trend that the batteries are following, how they're trying to pack more and more and more energy into these battery cells. So am I up for electrical flying vehicles? Absolutely, man. I think we should take care of our environment. I mean, we see it everywhere nowadays. It's changing. For example, here we get really cold weather and then it starts raining out of nowhere. So that's not normal. I think we have to protect the environment. It's very important, I think, that we do it. You see, for example, what's happening right now in the Gulf of Mexico with the this oil pipe that bursts in the freaking ocean is burning. Like, how the heck is it's affecting our environment tremendously. I like to say I'm an advocate, not as much as I should, for protecting the environment. And something that I want to bring up is that I think we should start focusing on the real issue with global warming, with climate change. We're often too focused on this very individualistic mentality that, oh, I recycle, I don't use a straw. It's like, bro, that only contributes to like 2% of the global of the world pollution. 80% of, and the fact is that 80% of the pollution comes from only 8 companies in the world, or 8, what do you call it, entities. One of them is Pemex, which is like this big oil state company in Mexico, which is they own the pipe that bursts over there in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. So I just want to make sure that I bring that up and that people are aware that there's a bigger elephant in the room that we're not acknowledging, and is that we should also push for our policymakers to make sure there's more regulations to these big companies, and not only recycle, but also contribute to a bigger problem a solution to the bigger problem by reading on it, getting yourself educated, talking to policymakers, and eventually strike change at a bigger level. Because, like I said, these companies are contributing to the majority of the pollution on our planet. So we got to hold them accountable.
Very impactful words. Very, very impactful words, Jesus. And with that, we're going to go ahead and navigate over into the final question for today. You provided a bunch of insight, by the way, from climate change to jet propulsion to the difference between aeronautics and astronautics. We definitely appreciate all of these meaningful pieces of knowledge. But like I said, this is the final question. And what it is an opportunity for you to provide some more insight, some more knowledge, some more guidance to our audience. So here at Dream Shakerz, we're all about paying it forward. So what are 3 pieces of advice you would give to your younger self?
Oh, man. I think the first one is, don't be afraid to try something new. That, I believe, opens up a ton of different doors. Is be open to change, mainly, right? The second one is, I think this is very cliche, but I believe it's very true, is that don't be afraid of making a mistake. You learn through your mistakes. And I think the third one, and again, this phrase I used to think was pretty stupid. People used to say YOLO, you only live once. And as I've been getting older, man, I've been, this is something that is deeply engraved in my head, because my dad will tell me, you only have one life, you got to live it on your own terms. So I feel like if I could share that with my younger self, is that, do what makes you happy, respect other people, but also, as long as you're not infringing over someone else's freedom, live the life you want to live, because this is the only shot we get. I believe in God. I believe in the afterlife, but that's faith. What I have is this moment. So You only get one shot. That's pretty much it, man. Those three points.
Thank you so much for the insight, brother. We greatly appreciate you, King, and we look forward to having you on future episodes on the pod. This is not the first and the only or the last time that we'll speak, but this was amazing, right? From you talking about engineering to talking about space and talking about how we can save the world and do our fair share is truly amazing. So again, I appreciate you. We appreciate you. And we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Absolutely, man. I'll be more than happy to jump on the podcast with you guys anytime you guys want. I thought I was kind of nervous about it. I was like, man, what am I going to talk about? But you guys made it so simple, bro, that it's just the questions that you asked, they boom lined up after the other pretty smoothly. And you guys are pretty great hosts. And man, I'm so excited for what's next for the podcast.